Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another restful episode of true, scary stories to help you fall asleep. Today, we're going to be reading true Let's Not Meet horror stories. I hope you enjoy them. So without further ado, lay back, relax, and enjoy these true, scary stories. This happened before Christmas 2019, when I was 26. Also, for context, I'm a female, and it sticks with me to this day. I've thought about sharing this many times, but I was never sure if it was scary enough. I guess you decide. My then boyfriend, now husband, and I decided to meet for dinner at a Christmas market here in Switzerland. He would pick up our dog from doggy daycare, and I would get there after work. Some things that are good to know. At that point, we'd had our dog for about a year. He's called Bean. He's a medium-sized dog, and before he came to Switzerland, he was a street dog in Italy. He was about 2.5 years old at the time, and he still loved and still loves to get attention that he can. Also, Christmas markets are incredibly busy here, especially after work. People will meet there with friends to eat dinner and drink mulled wine. When we got to this Christmas market, we realized that it was way too busy to walk through with a dog, and I sent my boyfriend off to get my favorite street food, malawak. I waited at the edge of the market with Bean. Bean likes to greet everyone who looks at him, and by this point I had gotten used to talking with strangers because my dog wanted to meet them, so I wasn't too concerned at first when a dude came up to me. Full transparency, I don't remember word for word what was said. I'm not even sure what language this happened in. I do remember, though, that Bean happily greeted this guy, trying to stand up against him and licking his hands. The guy asked for his name and what breed he is, and I told him that Bean is a pinscher mix. That's when the situation started to turn. The man insisted that he must be a Besanji. How could I say he's a pinscher? All of a sudden, he switched. There's no better word to explain it. He grabbed Bean's leash and said, "I'll go now," and just tried to walk off with my dog. Thankfully, I had a firm grip on his leash. I was incredibly confused and flustered, and just stammered that he can't take my dog. He got increasingly more angry with every second that I didn't let go of the leash. I loudly told him to leave me alone, and Bean started to bark at the man. I've never seen Bean this angry and scared at the same time, and thankfully the man let go of the leash and slipped into the crowd. I was left standing there, a dumbfounded mess with a mess of a dog. Bean was barking and shaking, so I knelt down to calm him down, holding him and talking to him. My boyfriend was still somewhere in the crowd waiting for our food. After a while, a woman walked up to me and told me not to put my heel to the floor, as she'd just seen someone put a firecracker there. I don't know the name for this type of firecracker. They're small, like 1/4 of an inch, and usually thrown at the floor to make a little boom sound on impact. Someone had put them under my heel of my shoe, so it would explode when I put my heel down to get up. Now I don't know what's worse. Was it the same guy that tried to steal Bean? Or was it someone else who saw a distressed dog and thought, wow, let's scare that dog a bit more? I think the worst thing for me was that apart from that woman who warned me, no one helped me when I was harassed by a weird guy, even though I loudly told him to go away, and there were other people standing very close just watching. Bean was the one who scared the guy off in the end. Thankfully, the events of that night had no lasting impact on Bean. He still loves to greet strangers. I still remember it, and don't think that I will ever forget. Ever since I started living at this house, weird things have happened. It regularly sounds like someone is walking on the outside of the house at night, and it's starting to freak me and my roommates out. For some context, this is a college house. 4 girls in our 20s just looking for a fun place to live. There have been a few different encounters that have led us to this conclusion, and it only continues to fall into place. Let's go back to this summer when the first break-in was. An evening in September in the middle of the week. The garage door, the garage has never been used by us other than for storage, opened, and one of us was at home with music blasting. She heard it and didn't think anything of it, but about 5 minutes later went upstairs to check and found our garage door open and back door unlocked. Again, we do not use our garage. She looked around and found nothing missing and figured it was an accident. About a month later, we were having a party. It was around Halloween and we decided to have a costume party. Around 12 to 1 a.m., someone was in our backyard and turned to see a man walking up the side of our house. When the man saw him, he ran away and up the hill. We also, around this time, had one of our car windows broken. Nothing was stolen, just the window was broken. Last night, while driving around, we noticed a car we had seen drive by a few times and followed it up the hill. The man in this car, a middle-aged white man with a very receding hairline and arms covered in tattoos, comes to a complete stop in the middle of the street and turns around to look at us and then pulls to the side of the road. He waited there for a few minutes and we waited one street over. We saw him turn left and followed him into the neighborhood in front of ours. We lost sight of him and drove around the neighborhood a bit more. When driving in front of our house, we were wondering if anyone behind could see into our rooms and went to look in the street behind. The house that had direct view into my room happened to have this same car that was driving around our house sitting right in front of it. This car is very distinct. It's an old white sedan with a black shoe mark on the rear bumper. We immediately went back to our house and looked out the window at the house and realized that we had seen someone there before. On multiple separate occasions, there was a middle-aged man standing in the window looking at our house, sitting on the back porch in a lawn chair facing our house. Last night, when we went to bed, my roommate had her window open and heard footsteps, our fence gate open, and car doors. The footsteps sounded like they were directly outside her window, and I also heard them. Normally, I wouldn't jump to conclusions, but I feel like these occurrences just connect too well to be coincidental. If anyone has any ideas or input, please let me know. We are genuinely getting scared. I will update if anything else happens. Update. Yesterday morning, my roommate and I woke up to find that it had snowed and there were shoe prints outside. These clearly showed the path the person is taking, and it is exactly what we've been thinking. The footprints appear to start in the neighbor's yard, at the far fence, and then come down to the gate right next to our rooms. He walked directly under my roommate's window and turned around. His back was to the house, which is why we think that he is either listening or watching in our windows. The window he was sitting under just also happens to look right up into my roommate's bed, if not closed right. After that, the footprints go towards my room, and he turns back to the neighbor's path on the side of their house. This just confirms what we've already been thinking, and it just happens to be on the side we don't have a camera on. With this, our gate and footsteps situation from last month makes perfect sense. The shoe prints are huge, which fits perfectly with a tall man like the one we've seen before, and you can tell that the shoe is Nike. If I can figure out how to attach a photo on here, I will, but until then, I can only explain just how terrified we are. No matter what his intentions are, this is a huge man, and he could take us all down. Update number 2. The white car just turned out to be that we're pretty sure is a neighborhood dealer, because we saw him make a transaction with our neighbor. We honestly don't live in a sketch area. This is the first time that we've seen something like that. Update 3. I'm tired of trying to prove my situation, and most of the comments on here have turned negative and degrading. I would like to thank everyone for their advice and assistance, but I will no longer be updating, as I will be looking for advice outside of this platform. Thank you again to everyone who helped, but people are just not being very nice online. This is something that was super traumatic for me, but it was never discussed again in my household. I was talking with my mom about it the other night, and she still didn't say much. I thought that I would share my thoughts with you all. When I was 13, I got a Dell desktop for school. The internet was fairly new for me back in 2003. AOL and MySpace, Yahoo Messenger, AOL chat rooms, 16 female Cali anyone? AOL chat rooms was where I went. I was a shy, overweight kid back then, still shy to this day. But online I could be anyone. I could say anything. It was amazing. I discovered so many things when I got the internet. If I could be anyone, so could someone else. Thus, how I met one 27-year-old man. One night I logged on. The AOL dial-up sound still makes me feel uneasy. I was sitting in my cold, dark kitchen. The computer was here so I could be monitored. It was just me and my mom though, and she was always working, so no one ever really monitored me. Plus, she had no idea how to use a computer, so I got away with a lot. I was bored, so I hopped into an AOL chat room, lurked for a bit. Then, 15 female here. I was really 13, but saying that I was 15 made me feel so much more mature. Private message incoming. Hey, my name is Rob. Where are you from? And that's how it started. I told him where I was from, that I was in high school, which wasn't a lie. My school was from 7th to 12th grade. You? 19 male, New York. Oh man, was it cool to be talking to an older guy, and boy was he cute. Honestly, I don't remember much. Maybe I blanked it out. Maybe my memory is just shot. I do remember emails back and forth, the occasional phone call. I remember finding out that he was talking to another girl, and I wanted to break things off, but he begged and pleaded until I caved. Then the let's meet. I was nervous. He had never asked for a pic, had never really asked for much from me, just the emails back and forth, a phone call a day. But somehow he made me feel safe, made me feel wanted, cared for. He drove from New York to West Virginia one day. My mom worked right beside my house, so he parked about a quarter mile away and took the back alley to enter my house. My friend was with me when he showed up, but was scared when she seen him and ran out the back door. I maybe should have taken a hint from that, but I just stood on the back porch with my head down, was given a hug as he led me inside. Not 5 minutes after being there, sitting on the couch, did he move things further. Then further, even into my bedroom. I won't go into the details on what happened next. I assume that most can guess. After he left, with instructions to get in his car after I get off of school bus, and we'll go on a date. I had no idea where he was staying. I lived extremely far in the country, an hour's drive from the closest hotel. The next day I get ready for school, ride the bus for the 45-minute drive, and as soon as I hop off in the school parking lot, I get directly into his car. No one noticed. No one said anything. We drive around, never go on a date. He just finds different places to park so that he can use me. I notice a photo of another young girl, 15 or 16, in the visor of his car. I question it. I believe him when he tells me it's his cousin. Believe when I question why his hairline is receding so much. Believe him when he tells me that I can't see his driver's license because he left it in the hotel. I believed him when he said he loved me. I get dropped off back at school, super sad that he was going back home, with promises that he will call. Again, everything feels very fuzzy. I can't remember many emotions from this time. I do remember that a few days later my mom says that she found out that I skipped school with a man, that I was never to see him again, and that was that. I do remember sending an email. I do remember a late night phone call. I do remember saying I wish I could just live with you. I remember him suggesting to come get me. I remember saying okay. Days later, by the time he made the drive again, I was feeling iffy about leaving my mom. I loved her after all. I didn't think things through. I didn't put much thought into it really. I packed a few clothes in a suitcase. Forgot all underwear. That's one of my sharpest memories. I felt bad that he drove 8 hours to get me, so I left in the middle of the night. Got in the car to him and his cousin. He got in the back seat with me. Proceeded to use me while his cousin drove home. Then got back in the front seat. This happened a few times between home and his. The drive took forever. I had nothing to drink. I was offered nothing when they got something. They stopped to nap at a rest stop, and I attempted a collect call to my mom, which was disabled on our phone. I dug around for some change to get something to drink, but couldn't afford anything in the convenience store, so I drank out of the truck stop sink. Hours later, we park a block away from his house when he runs to get something. I am sitting in the back seat, waking up from a nap when around 8 or so men and women in black suits surround the car, screaming for us to get out with our hands up. My first thought was, oh crap, the first 10 minutes in New York and I'm already getting robbed. I'm terrified. I get out and a man pulls me over to the curb while the other officers force his cousin onto the ground. All the while they're asking my name and age, telling me to tell his cousin my age. I'm put in the back of an unmarked car, driven to the New York Police Department, past reporters, cameras, and news trucks. Snuck into the back of the station, where I see Rob in handcuffs for the first time. And for in love 14-year-old me, this is devastating. I'm taken into a room and questioned for hours. I am then taken to the hospital, then a hotel where a nice woman brings me Taco Bell and stays with me until I fall asleep. The next day, 2 FBI officers escort me home on a plane, where I get off and where I am greeted by police officers, my mother, and a horde of news reporters. I later found out that when my mom reported me missing, the police didn't want to do much. They didn't even take the picture of me. She had had his license plate number. She remembered seeing his car parked by the road that first meeting. She took note since it was an out-of-state car. Thanks to her being vigilant, I do find this is the only reason that I am alive today. The police said that they would look into it, but that wasn't enough for my mom. She contacted a family friend who in turn contacted the governor of West Virginia, who in turn made the police look further into it. After they ran the license number, looked into the man and found out who he was, that was when they issued an Amber Alert, noting that I was in extreme danger. My cousin told my mom that he looked at Rob's rap sheet and it was a mile long, but wouldn't tell my mother what was on it for fear of scaring her more. I never went to court. I never went to any hearings, but I did fall into a horrible depression. My friend's parents wouldn't let him hang out with me. People spray painted slut on my locker at school. I had no friends, but most of all, I thought that a man was in prison for loving me. When I learned that he got sentenced to 10 years in prison, which he served every year of, I became deeply troubled. I was in and out of the mental hospital for self-harm for years, on a slew of depression medication. Psychiatrists never talked to me about anything. I had to process it all myself. My teenage years were better though. I transferred schools, made best friends, graduated. But still, in the back of my mind, I felt that I was the reason that a man lost 10 years of his life. Until I was told that he was let out of prison. A couple of years after he was out, I contacted him on Facebook. At the time, I was around 24 or 25. He told me that if I ever contacted him again, that he would kill both me and my mother, and that he still knows where I live. I had no idea what he planned to do with me. My mom still says that selling me to a trafficker. I was told that he had other girls my age that he was talking to. Some good things happened because of my kidnapping. Schools all over my state started internet safety education classes. Kids were taught safety. Parents were taught how to keep kids safe. No other girls were taken by this man. So, to the man who ruined many years of my life, I'm 29 now. I'm happy, healthy, and I have zero remorse that you are now listed as a level 3 offender and that you were in prison for so many years. So one night, me and my friends were playing some hide and seek in our hometown. We were probably like 13 at that time. So I went into a small area that is basically like a shortcut from the main road to the side road. I unfortunately went alone, and I didn't even think of what could happen. Remember, we were only 13 at that time, and we didn't bring phones with us, so if something happened to us, nobody would even know. So the game started and I ran sprinting to the woods area. The first 30 seconds was good. Disclaimer: we have a rule that we have to come to the checkpoint where we start, and we have to save ourselves from not getting picked to search. After around 1 minute, I started hearing footsteps. I say, "Hello, are you one of my friends?" And something that was there didn't say anything. So I started backing out. Fortunately, the woods area has a main route and 2 side ones, so I could have run either way. I start backing out, and from nowhere, the man just appears from the woods and starts sprinting at me while saying, "I'm gonna catch you," in a creepy and eerie way, like a kidnapper. Fortunately, I train in football, soccer for all you Americans, so I knew that I could definitely outrun him, or at least make him tired. I sprint all of the way through the woods, with my only light being the moonlight, and after around 2 minutes he gave up. I continued sprinting, and got myself all the way to the checkpoint, and told all of my friends what had just happened. Of course, no one believed me, but I didn't care since I knew it was real. To this day, I still don't know who or what had tried to catch me that night, but for sure, I know if I wasn't a sports guy, the outcome would have been very, very different. Recently, there was an Amber Alert, and my daughter was asking me what that beeping sound was all about. For those who don't know, an Amber Alert goes out when a child is reported missing. If you receive notifications, you know what I'm talking about. The alert will sometimes give information like the victim's appearance, as well as the perpetrator, the location of the abduction, make and model of vehicle. My phone started beeping one evening while helping my daughter clean her room. An Amber Alert. She asked about it. I gave her a small rundown and that was that. However, it triggered a childhood memory that I have where I believe with all my heart that I was almost kidnapped when I was a kid. To be clear, this isn't a memory that was laying dormant in my subconscious, and this random Amber Alert and talk with my kid caused it to resurface in my mind. This incident is something that I've pondered and thought about off and on for years now. I'm a 41-year-old male, by the way. It's just been a while since I've considered the factors and details of the experience, and this recent Amber Alert and talk with my daughter really caused me to pause and reflect on the incident itself once again, and here I am. As a parent, you worry about these things, and do all that you can to protect your child, especially when you've personally experienced something truly scary like this. The occurrence happened when I was just a young kid. My guess is around 7 or 8. I can't be sure, but I think that that's a safe estimate based on the fact that much of those early childhood memories aren't there anymore. I do remember my kindergarten experience, which I would have been 5 or 6, and also later grades. So this incident must have happened sometime after or around the ages of 7 to 8. My parents took me to a neighboring city to do some shopping. We lived in a small rural town with not much on offer, So from time to time, we would go to this neighboring city about 45 minutes from where we were located. It just had more to offer. They would take me up there for school clothes shopping, out to eat because restaurants were better, and because my mom was a crafter. So she loved to make crafts. It was her thing. There were different craft stores and a fabric store that she liked going to up there. This specific trip, we went to a fabric store up there. Joanne Fabrics to be exact. This was a pretty big store. As a little kid, I guess most every place seems big. But no kidding, this really was a sizable store. My dad sat out in the car while I went in with my mom. He did that a lot, sat in the car, when there was a store that he just didn't want to go into. I can't blame him there. I can't recall exactly what all my mom was looking for or trying to get in that store that day, but I do remember what section we were in. An area with a bunch of racks and various fabrics hanging. Imagine a clothing store with circular racks, with clothes hanging around them. And that's pretty much what it's like at this fabric store. Racks of hanging fabrics. I remember this area being slightly towards the beginning or entrance of the store. As my mom was looking through these racks, I began to wonder, though not far. Just enough to look around myself. I was probably bored and started wandering around, is my guess. But I could still see my mom just up and over a few racks away, so it wasn't like I was on the other side of the store or anything. A random man approached me, and honestly, I can't even remember at what direction he came from. It's just like I was there by myself 1 minute, and the next I looked up and saw this guy. It was like he came in fast and out of nowhere. I quickly looked over to where my mom was. She had moved a few racks up and away, but I could still see her. There was a fair bit of distance between my mom and me at this point. So here I am, standing behind some rack of fabric with this older guy opposite me on the other side of this rack. Then he speaks. "Hey, little boy, how you doing there?" I remained silent because he took me completely off guard. He asked, "Where's your folks at? Are you alone in there?" I stood still and quiet. "Come here, I got something to show you." At this point, he started advancing towards me, coming around the rack to where I was. I quickly started the other way, but he stopped and started coming around the other way as if to meet me in the middle. I was scared at this moment and became instantly aware that this man seemed dangerous and like he was trying to get a hold of me. "Come here," he barked. I jerked fast to the left, but he did the same. He had this wild look in his eyes. Whichever direction I went, he followed. But remember, there's a rack between us. God, I'm so thankful for that rack. After some back and forth movements from me and this man, I finally lock in on my mom and yell, "Mom, help." You would have thought that I screamed bloody murder. It was so loud, but it got my mom's attention. "What's wrong?" she asked. This startled the man, and he looked over his shoulder in the direction of my gaze and confirmed, yep, that must be his mother. His demeanor completely changes, and it's as if everything is just fun and games, and he was just messing around. And he said as much to my mom. "I was just messing around with him. No harm, ma'am." My mom came to where I was as we reconnected. The guy just tips his hat at my mom and makes his way out of the store. I explained to my mom what just happened, and this guy was trying to get me. I was so upset and shook up. She told me that I did the right thing by yelling and getting her attention. It was so terrifying for sure, and I'm thankful that something crazy didn't happen. Could I have been imagining things like maybe this guy was really just messing around? I very much think that there were nefarious intentions. Why would a random older guy be pursuing a fabric store? If he was just there for something like crafts or fabrics, why would he promptly leave when confronted? I truly believe he was up to no good. Anyway, that's my story, and I appreciate anyone taking the time to read. So we went for a hike with my boyfriend for his birthday party. We're not very superstitious people, but we were quite anxious the whole time. We didn't meet anyone on the road, and I was feeling weird. Like I was thinking, I know we're going to meet someone. But that someone I wasn't chill about. My boyfriend was a bit nervous, which is unusual of him as he's very used to hiking pretty much anywhere. So we were 4+ hours into the hike, and we reached almost the end. There was some sort of cabin in the forest, and a guy looking like Tom Hanks in Castaway, I swear to God, was there. He jumped out of his cabin, naked with a knife, and began to make grunts. I told my boyfriend that he has a knife, and the guy starts to run towards us. My boyfriend told me to run. Go. And I tried to do my best as I'm not the most sporty girl. I believe I fell a few times because I have a lot of scratches and a bump on the shin, but I didn't feel it in the moment. After what felt like forever trying to run and escape him, we succeeded to find a way out of the neighborhood and then on a road. We felt so much relief at that moment. My question is, we were in shock and pretty traumatized by it. Do you feel like it's a serious event, or is it not that big of a deal? I know that it might sound stupid to ask, but we don't know anymore. Maybe we're overreacting. We did report him to the police, by the way, and they're supposed to go to the place, but we're not sure that they're going to take their time for that. This happened to me just last Tuesday, and I can't stop thinking about it. I'll start this story by saying that I'm a 30-year-old female who lives with my fiancé and our 2 dogs. I have 2 huskies. One is 2 and one is 4 months old. My huskies are not guard dogs to save their life. They don't bark nor howl. These dogs just love people so much. My brother-in-law and friends have walked in on multiple occasions, and the dogs don't make a peep. So anyways, it's 8 p.m. It's dark out. I'm home alone. My fiancé had a hockey game. I'm in the bathroom with the door closed and the blow dryer going, so I can't really hear anything going on around me. That is until I hear one of the dogs howl. I stop the blow dryer and listen, thinking that the dogs are fighting again. Then I hear a faint knock, and the dogs start going crazy. Barking, howling, jumping into the bay window so bad that I thought that they'd break it. I'm thinking, what the heck is making them go crazy like that? Maybe a dog or a skunk. I look out my bedroom window, as it was the closest view to the front door for me. Well, lo and behold, there's 2 men in hoodies, standing at the front door. They start knocking louder, and this time my 2-year-old husky jumps from the bay window to the front door and starts growling and is ramming his body into the door. I'm watching this from my bedroom as the dog jumps into the door. One of the men jumps back startled, looks at the other guy, and they just walk away. I called my fiancé to get home ASAP. I watched them walk away down the road. They weren't selling anything as they didn't stop at any other houses. I was so creeped out and still am. Thank goodness for my crazy dogs. And scary men at my door, let's not meet again. I used to be a surveillance investigator for insurance claims, work injury stuff, to see if people who claimed to have been hurt at work and were collecting free money were actually not injured. I did this full time for about 10 years, doing a new case every few days for 10 years. You see a lot of weird stuff. For example, one time I saw drug dealers in a downtown city literally riding horseback. You see scary stuff too, obviously, if in bad neighborhoods, etc. Scariest encounter went down about 20 years ago. This was a case in a somewhat rural area which were always the toughest. You get there at 6 a.m., see what cars are in the vicinity, and run plates to see if they match the person. Then mostly you watch for the registered vehicle to depart if you found one. This place had one car in the driveway with no plates, which actually was quite unusual. You are also provided an age/height/weight of the person, and in rare cases a pic. So I knew this was a guy in his mid-30s, average height and weight. First day it turned out he left before I got there. Protocol is if you can't confirm they are home by 10 a.m., 4 hours on site, you literally need to knock on their door to confirm if they are home. You usually pretend to be a UPS delivery in a costume and a dollar store item in an envelope with a clipboard. Surprisingly, that works. Anyways, no one was home. Second day came back at 5 a.m., and lo and behind a second vehicle was there, a truck, also with no plates. The dude came out around 5:30 a.m. and left. I followed him, but he was immediately wise and knew he was being followed, which usually means they are up to no good, working while collecting insurance disability money, aka insurance fraud. I let him go while trying to be discreet about it. I came back the third day in another car, which you also sometimes had to do. This time he left again early, and I successfully followed him to a farm in the neighboring rural hills. In short, I busted him on video doing heavy-duty farm work for several hours. He eventually caught on and realized he was being watched. I took off from my parked position and thought there was no way he could suddenly get off his tractor, run to his truck and get to me, as there were driveways, etc. between us and also a creek. Somehow, he was then suddenly on my butt in his truck in some scary rural mountain roads. I was scared, so I kept driving. And somehow I made it to the freeway. I had literally been lost in the mountains. On the freeway, he followed me for miles, and I couldn't shake him. He would pull beside me at times and flex his arm and gesture pull over. Dude was actually pretty scary looking, and I had evidence on him that would cost him in more ways than one. I literally called 911 and reported a drunk driver for harassing me, but was surprisingly told the officers were in between shifts and couldn't help. There was an easy pass bridge about 20 miles up if I got that far, and at first I thought I could lose him there if he didn't have the easy pass, but then realized again he had no plates, so wouldn't matter. Anyways, after many miles, I finally was able to shake him, but he remained pretty close behind. I exited the freeway and found a gas station. A cop was there, and I reported this guy and his truck. The cop made a call, and I didn't see this guy pull up. Shortly thereafter, I gassed up my car and left and drove home and submitted my report. I'm sure his free insurance money ended at the very least. Scariest part, actually, is that I was worried this guy had my license plate and could run it somehow, as I was able to do for work, and locate where I live. I began to research him online. Sometimes in that line of work, you learn the potential insurance fraud of the person you are following is the least of their criminal endeavors. Well, I learned this guy was a hardcore convicted felon who had been in federal prisons and was a gang member and hard drug user and dealer. I was scared, but nothing happened over the next few years and I eventually forgot about it. But about 5 years later or so, I had a case in the same rural area again and thought about this guy. I wanted to Google him to see what the police blotters revealed about him in the last few years. I Googled him again and discovered he was actually dead. I learned that a couple years prior, he had taken his girlfriend hostage with a gun, killed someone who tried to help her, then was killed himself by another person who actually saved her. Don't need to worry about meeting him again. This is a story that pops back up in my mind from time to time. I've only told it to a few people, but I definitely feel like it deserves its place in here. It's for sure one of the scariest moments I've ever had as a child. Back when I was around 10 years old, My mom finally decided that it was time for her to start taking her driver's license. When she began taking lessons, she was struggling a lot. For that reason, my dad decided that he wanted to do some practice with her, besides the official driving lessons with her instructor, just to make sure that she'd pass the upcoming test on her first try. My little brother and I were attending swimming lessons at this nearby university at the time. Behind a forested area near the university lays this huge student parking area surrounded by trees, which turned out to be basically empty every weekend. My dad saw the opportunity to take my mom here to drive around for a bit, and brought my little brother and I with them since we were too young to stay home alone. We brought a football with us. When we arrived on the parking lot, later on in the evening, my parents began their practice. My little brother and I quickly got bored though, and asked if we could go over to the little grass field on the side of the parking lot to play some football. My parents let us since they'd always be able to keep their eyes on us whilst driving around. After playing for some time, my parents ended up driving around on the other side of the parking lot. They were approximately 300 to 400 meters away from my brother and I. Suddenly, this white Toyota pulls into the parking lot. They were playing almost right at the exit/entrance. The car turns around and stops on my right side with the vehicle facing the exit. The driver rolls down his windows and presents himself as Thomas. He looked friendly. He was good looking and young. A guess would be around 30. This is where things started to get weird. On the passenger seat was a woman covering her face with a newspaper. All I could see was long blonde hair. And on the back seat was a baby sat in a baby chair. Thomas immediately states that he's from the police, and that we have to get in the car immediately as he asks to talk to us. My brother actually took 2 steps towards the vehicle, but I stuck my arm in front of his chest as I was sensing that something was off. The woman still covering her face at this point and not saying a word. Thomas then raised his voice and told us once again to get in the car, or else he'd have to come out and get us. My brother and I froze out of fear. Suddenly, the woman put down the newspaper, showed her face, and told us in the most calm, motherly voice to just listen to the man. The woman looked young, pretty, and like a person who wouldn't hurt a fly. At this moment, I began screaming as loud as I could. What we hadn't seen at that point was that my dad was already running as fast as he could towards us. He was coming from behind the vehicle, so we didn't see it. My parents didn't have time to drive to us, since the road down the parking lot was twisted all the way. When my dad heard my scream, he started yelling as loud as he could. "Hey, who are you? Get away from my children." As soon as Thomas heard my dad and realized my brother and I weren't alone, he threw his car into gear and took off as fast as he could. He most definitely looked like a person who was scared when he saw my dad. My dad was furious and told my brother and I to hurry up back to the car. He didn't even think about calling the police at that point. He just wanted to beat the guy up himself. That resulted in us driving around for the next hour trying to find him before my dad cooled down and decided that he should probably just call the police. We never found out who these people were, but this episode taught me to never judge a book by its cover. People can be the most friendly looking people in the world and still wish evil upon you or the ones that you love. I'm not sure what these people would have done to us. I am sure about one thing though. They definitely were not from the police. My parents divorced in 2006. I was 17 when they split right before their 18-year anniversary. It was a long time coming. My dad sustained a head injury 4 years prior, so his drinking and drug use went from a lot to a cyclone of crazy. So my mom risked it and left. Dad left, and we remained in the same house. We had moved from our small town to a small city near our state's capital. It was weird, but the first month he was gone, we had a peace we never knew we could have.
and I remember feeling actually free for the first time in my life till that point. My dad had to be supervised by state police when he collected his stuff, as he was violent and threatened to kill me on several occasions. He never cleared out the basement, but left garbage, and so my mom, myself, and some friends that hung out at the time helped the cleanup effort, and we ended up getting over $200 in returns from all the beer cans. My friends and I got different furniture, instruments, stereos, and a fridge to put soda and beers in as we took over the garage and basement. My friends and I discovered my dad had been growing weed in the basement, as he left all of his plants and equipment behind. At the time, it was illegal in my state. My mom has a job where she could get fired and lose her license as well. My friends and I didn't want to get involved with selling any of it, and we honestly were just interested in having fun on our terms. We liked to drink, but beyond that, it never got into anything more. So we threw it all out. My dad had told us that he got everything and that was it, and I would never have to interact with him, really. He gave me up during the family court stuff. So we thought. Our house is on a hill and borders the actual city that has alleyway access, which led to the small backyard. The basement access was outside only and was kept with a padlock, and the door itself was pretty sturdy. The house was next to a diner and a storage garage, so everything closed after 5 p.m., and there were other houses on the street as well, and it's a main drag that connects you to a small highway. I don't remember when it started, but I recall my dad would call our house nightly drunk and accusing my mom of cheating, as he was already living with another woman at this time as well. He would call crying and just belligerent some nights. Then we started having people prowl around the house. It started very subtly until my special needs sister started seeing a ski-masked man at her window. I often would chase someone away with a baseball bat some nights, alone by myself, or watch my sister as my mom had to work multiple jobs. I started working as well. I would often wait up most nights and would just patrol, making sure that everyone was safe. And most nights it was nothing. I developed a good layer of trauma from all of this, and a caffeine addiction, as I was always on alert. I had suspected a few of my dad's friends, especially since they were very interested in the basement. I'm also not a small person. I had given up playing football and had trained to play for a D1 school, so I was still fresh from all of it and was very strong still. One night in particular, I remember being awoken by my bedroom window being tampered with. I looked and saw a man in a ski mask trying to open my window with a large hunting knife in his mouth. I snuck down on the floor and crawled out of my room and into the living room. I grabbed the Louisville Slugger that I kept by my front door. I got my shoes and jacket on as it was winter. I snuck outside and confronted the man, who I recognized as one of my dad's friends. He started talking crap and making fun of me as I warned him that he needed to leave or I would hurt him. He took a swing at me with a knife, and I pulled back and cracked him on the shoulder as hard as I could and heard bones break. I watched his shoulder move in an unnatural way as he fell down in the snow. I got on top of him and started punching him over and over, taking the ski mask off. My mom came out, and our neighbors came as well as he stopped moving and was unconscious. It took my mom and 5 others to pull me off of him, and they had a hard time. As we waited for the cops, he came to and managed to get up as he tried to run, but he was having a hard time. As a car came and he hopped in as he took off before we could stop him. This was before Ring doorbells and most people had security systems. We all gave our story, and the cops took his knife and that was it. Things were quiet for a while before it started again that summer, and I had cornered the same guy in the dark in the small yard. He yelled out that he wanted his equipment from the basement, and I told him that we tossed it and he charged at me. I picked up a large garden brick we had piled back there and tossed it overhand and hit him in the same place I did months prior, and I heard bones break again. This time I sat on him as he kicked and screamed. My mom called the cops and they came and actually arrested him. They told me that I had broken his collarbone and that he wanted to press charges. Nothing ever came of it, and after the whole situation ended up blowing over and it all stopped, my dad admitted that he was involved and wasn't sorry that he pitted these men against his kids and ex-wife, which has altered my relationship with him. I saw that man during the pandemic, as our city had a lot of public gatherings and stuff. And while I am not the same person, I was very happy to see him have a level of healthy fear. Also, another one of the guys involved I had run into as well at the same event last year was very cautious about me and referenced that he didn't want me to do what I did to his friend. These guys are 1 point used to fight and run with rowdy people with my dad, and it felt good to know that as someone who doesn't get violent, that people who do have a healthy fear to never mess with my family or to try to break into my home, because there are consequences. I think I was around 10 years old when me and my buddies decided to go out and have a good time. Back in those days, kids all around used to make these poor man's airsoft weapons out of plastic tubes and rubber gloves and use dried peas as ammo. So anyways, we went out and had a blast shooting at each other. And at some point, me and my teammate realized that a few of our buddies had been gone for quite some time, but we had a general idea of where we went. So we started heading towards them. As soon as we arrived to the general area where we thought that they would be, our buddies run fast, yelling, "Run, you guys. There's this crazy old man coming in a van." So I was a little confused at this time and watched as my buddies ran off, nowhere to be seen. And at this point, I see that van coming, and I panic and start running. This guy catches me pretty quick, almost running me over with his van, and yelling that if I move an inch, he would end me. He gets a hold of me and starts dragging me back to his van as I scream for help. When I'm almost inside of this guy's van, this guy, maybe in his 20s, a long guy with a heavy metal outfit, yells to this guy, "Leave the kid alone or I will kill you where you stand." This guy turns around, and at the same time, this 20 or so year old guy drops him with a single punch and keeps on beating him while telling me to run to my parents. My dad tried to find the guy who literally saved my life to thank him and reward him, but only found a puddle of blood where this happened. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. My dad needed to go to the one Asian grocery store at the time in Kansas City, Missouri. It was a small store, but I remember just aisle upon aisle of random goods from all over Asia. It was dimly lit and wasn't a particularly bright store. Anyways, we went there at least 2 times a month, so I knew where all the good candy and snacks were. My dad was in another section, and I was in the snack section. I was minding my own business when all of a sudden, someone literally picked me up from behind with his hands and arms. It was a pretty tight grip, and I remember feeling quite scared. My training kicked in, and I yelled for my dad and started to kick him with my heels. After what felt like forever, he dropped me. I only saw the back of his head as he walked away and out the door. Not sure if I yelled loud enough, as my dad never came around and I had to go and find him. This experience definitely stuck with me. Now that I'm a father of 2 young kids, I think about it even more. So, to the crazy guy at the Asian food store, let's not meet again. I'm a young girl living in Iran, and I've made this anonymous account to post the things that could threaten my safety if they were posted on my main account. As you probably already know, Iran is going through a revolution, and people have been protesting again for 2 months straight now. People often chant "down with the dictator" from their windows at night here. Tonight, they had just stopped when I decided to go for a smoke, I went on the main street, which is less than 50 meters away from my home. I wasn't wearing a hijab, and to be honest, I was paranoid about it all the time. But everything went perfectly normal, and I turn around to go back home thinking I'm being too scared these days. Halfway through the alley, I noticed a group of 5 huge men. One of them was holding a speaker that was playing one of our protest songs. 2 of them were shooting laser beams into windows at each side of the valley, and the others had guns. They were the Islamic Republic's forces baiting people to come to their windows. I couldn't look at them when they got closer. I just held my breath and walked past them while my heart was about to jump out of my chest. It didn't take more than a minute, and I was only a few meters away from home, yet it felt like forever. And in that instant, I was almost certain that I was not going to get home. I was terrified and all alone, as these huge armed men, looking for probably the most peaceful protesters ever, were walking towards me while I wasn't wearing a hijab. I don't know if they really minded me much or not, but regardless, it was absolutely horrifying for me. Thank you so much for listening to all of the stories in this video. I hope you enjoyed them. I also hope that you enjoy the extra rain at the end. Get a good night's sleep, everyone, and I'll read to you in the next video. Bye-bye now.